Ahoy mateys! Captain Audrey here, and this is the Pirate Excavation Project video. Today we will learn some important things about pirate life, as well as some very famous pirates. We will discover what they ate and drank, how difficult life was on a ship, and why pirates became pirates. Then we will have some fun excavating pirate bones from this sand block, and assemble our very own pirate skeleton. Okay, now that we know what project we're doing, let's move on to our materials. Alright, me hearties, this is our project bag of materials. Let's take out our project card first so that you know what materials are in the bag. So we need our tool bag, of course, as well as our pirate excavation kit. Now this has your sand block, your digging tool, your brush, and your twine. You will also need your wire and a big sheet of paper to do this on. On the other side of our project card, we have learning objectives for this project, as well as critical thinking questions to work on with your parents. Okay, now that we know what's in our project bag, let's get started with our lesson. Okay, before we start our Pirate Bones excavation project, let's learn a little more about pirate life and some famous pirates. So pirates come from all over the world. England, France, Spain, the Caribbean, and even China. Pirates were thieves or criminals that sailed the open waters of the world, and their way of living was to steal from others. They'd steal treasures like gold and jewels, and things to aid in their survival, such as anchors, medicine, food, drink, and other supplies. So why did a person become a pirate? Sometimes honest sailors left their seafaring ships because life was just so miserable, and they turned to piracy to survive. Others came from poor areas of countries where no jobs were available, and poverty drove people to piracy. Others were just in search of power and quick riches like gold, silver, and jewelry. So do you think the life of pirates was a swashbuckling like the movies of Jack Sparrow? Hate to break it to you, but no. Pirates had a rough life. Conditions on board pirate ships were harsh, so things that we take for granted every day were not so easy to come by on a long journey at sea. That included eating and drinking fresh food and water, bathing and keeping clean, as well as just even a good night's sleep. So what did pirates eat and drink? When at sea, they lived on a very limited diet of dried beans, biscuits, pickled vegetables, and beef that had been salted. Because there was a lack of fresh fruits and vegetables on long sea voyages, pirates frequently developed scurvy, which is a lack of vitamin C that affects the strength of bones. Later, pirates and other sailors learned that adding lemons or limes to their diet would prevent and cure scurvy. They were often nicknamed limeys. Because fresh water was very limited and would go stagnant, pirates often disinfected the water by mixing rum, sugar, lime juice together, which prevented the disease like scurvy. Many seamen drank grog, or beer or ale, as opposed to water, due to the water on board becoming undrinkable with green scum and slime. Often when pirates were out to sea for months on end, their food supply would dwindle. They had no way to keep their food cold or frozen, which means that much of their food supply would rot or grow mold. So where did pirates sleep and bathe? If you were the captain or ranked higher amongst the crew, you might be spoiled with your own private sleeping quarters. Otherwise, you'd be sleeping out in the open, in a small space with dozens of other crew members. Sometimes they had hammocks, other times it was just the hard floor. And if you were lucky, you had straw to soften the floor. The preferred bed in a pirate ship was a hammock, as it would rock and sway with the ship's motions, providing an easier night of sleep. Fresh water on board a ship was reserved for drinking purposes, not bathing purposes. With only salt water to cleanse with, not a lot of bathing happened with pirates, which was sometimes a cause of disease. But eventually, they were stinky. And there was no such thing as deodorant back then. So pirates did not usually live a long life because of these conditions, including exposure to weather, poor hygiene, getting wounded in battle, or developing an infection, exposure to others who were often ill, starvation, dehydration, or drowning if a ship was flipped over in a storm or sank in battle. As you can see, a pirate's life wasn't always the adventure and never-ending fun like the movies make it out to be. Pirates often started out as young sailors who quickly learned that stealing was the easiest and quickest way to make a living. Both Blackbeard and Calico Jack were thought to have begun as sailors before crossing on into piratehood. Blackbeard, or Edward Teach, was an English pirate from an aristocratic family commanding the Queen Anne's Revenge, which he captured and outfitted with 40 cannons. He turned to pirate life after serving as a privateer for Britain. Teach was nicknamed Blackbeard for his menacing appearance and large black beard. Legend has it that he intimidated his victims by weaving hemp into his beard and setting it on fire before battle. But in reality, he would often put small candles or pieces of fuse into his hair and light those. They would give off smoke rather than burn as a fire, which gave him a demonic, devilish appearance. Though he was described in fictional stories as barbarous and bloodthirsty, there was no evidence he ever harmed his crew or anyone under his captivity. Being both a smart and educated man, he used his wits to take over ships and steal their goods. Blackbeard's purported flag consisted of a horned skeleton using a spear piercing a bleeding heart. Blackbeard was also one of the wealthiest pirates, and in 2011, a sunken ship discovered off the coast of North Carolina was confirmed to be the Queen Anne's Revenge. Captain Calico Jack Rackham, an English pirate operating in the Bahamas and Cuba, gained the nickname from the calico clothing he wore. He was not regarded as a great fighter or maker of big battle plans, but he was regarded for his cunning mind and tendency to use politics to further his goals. Sailing on his flagship, the Kingston, Rackham flew his signature Jolly Roger flag, which was black with a white human skull and 2 white swords crossed beneath it. Calico Jack is best known as an unusual captain, as he sailed with women pirates like Anne Bonny, his love and first mate. Most pirates were very superstitious and thought women brought bad luck to ships. Anne was an Irish-American woman born to a wealthy family and disowned when she joined pirates at age 16. She became involved with Calico Jack and posed as a man to join his crew. Anne never commanded a ship, but is famous for being one of the few female pirates of her time, as well as a fierce fighter. Rackham and Anne Bonny spent over a year attacking small vessels around the West Indies and took on another man, later identified as a woman, named Mary Read. Mary served in the army on the Dutch vessel captured by Calico Jack Rackham, and like Anne, she dressed as a man to hide her gender. Mary Read, an Englishwoman sailor, joined the pirate crew and befriended Anne Bonny, who eventually learned of her secret. And as the story goes, Mary and Anne led the fight on their ship when the crew was attacked by an English sloop from Jamaica intended to capture them for piracy. Fighting fiercely to protect their ship and crew, they held off the English for as long as they could. But eventually the sloop was overtaken, and the pirates were arrested and taken to Jamaica, where they were convicted of the crime of piracy. Our last pirate is one of the most successful pirates in history, a Chinese woman named Xing Shi, sometimes called Zheng Yi Sao. Born into poverty, she later married a pirate named Zheng Ji. After his death, she took on the sole control of their pirate confederation. Zheng Ji confirmed the control of pirates through careful alliances and a strict code of conduct. The code was severe. Anyone caught giving commands on his own or disobeying those of the superior was immediately done away with. And at the height of her power, she, also called the Pirate Queen, had as many as 1,800 ships and 80,000 crew under their command in a pirate navy called the Red Flag Fleet. And the natives of China and European nations could not stop her 12-year reign of terror as she plundered the South China Seas. Then, in 1810, she broke up the Pirate Confederation and negotiated a generous surrender deal with the Chinese government. Not only were the pirates pardoned for their crimes, but some were allowed to keep their vessels and join the Chinese army. All right, now that we've learned a little bit about famous pirates and their lives, let's get started with making our project. All right, now we're ready to start with our project. Let's excavate some bones. So I'm just going to grab my scissors here and gently remove our plastic covering. There we go. Now don't forget to put this in the trash. Don't just leave it on the floor. Now that we've got our sand block, let's take out our excavation tools. Here we have our pick set and our brush. Now we're going to be using this pick and we're going to gently work at our sand block, pushing any excess debris to the side. Now you can use the big end or the small end depending on the amount of area you're working with. I'd recommend starting with the bigger end just to cover more surface. Now this can get a little messy, so make sure that whatever you're brushing off, it stays on your newsprint or working space. And once you run into something hard, if you feel something blocking your pick, that's a good sign that you've run across some bones. And when we get to that, we're going to gently scrape. I think I just found something. So, as I was saying before, let's start gently scraping at it, just around, because we don't want to damage our bones. We want to be good, responsible excavators here. Let's see what we've got. I'm going to use my brush just to uncover something to see if I can tell what we have here. Ooh! I think we've got the rib cage, folks. Let's just start unearthing that. I'm going to gently tap it to the side just to really get that area cleaned up so I can see what I'm doing. See, bits go flying all the time, so make sure you're being careful. So I'm going to work from this side because it looks like that's closer to the edge of the rib cage that I've uncovered. You can also gently go around the rib cage at a slower pace. I'm just kind of taking the shortcuts here so you can see the whole process. But if you wanted to be a proper excavator, you just gently brush along the edges and gently scrape until you uncovered most, if not all, of your bone. Now, as we can see from this specific skeleton, our pirate friend had pretty good bone health. That was not the case for many pirates, as scurvy was quite a problem on ships. And scurvy was a disease that was caused if you didn't have enough vitamin C in your diet, and it would lead to bone deterioration, including in your teeth. So it made it hard to eat in the later stages of scurvy. However, it was later found by the British Navy that this was easily alleviated by daily doses of lime, which are ridiculously high in vitamin C. So yeah, make sure you eat your fruits and vegetables, kids. You don't want scurvy. As you can see, I'm gently feeling around the bone and digging out sand as I go along, just to make sure I'm not damaging anything, but also that I'm not missing any specific bone contours. Now these bones look to be right next to each other, so I'm going to try and pull these apart by digging deep into my sand block, just to loosen up the underlying sand. And I have to go about this rather carefully. I don't want to break either the bones or my pick. So as you can see, I'm gently scraping out to the side like so, just to create a nice bit of space for me to work with. There we go. I'm going to switch back to my wider end here, just to get that larger surface area. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now that I can see the side of my bone, I'm going to be using my wider surface area, just pressing against the bone and out towards the rest of the sand to gently remove that excess sand without damaging this bone, which I've yet to identify. Now, some of you at home might want to start guessing what kind of bone this is. I guess we'll find out sooner or later, so if you want to start making guesses, now's a good time. Just make note of what you think it might be, and we'll see if you were right. There we go. Now, to speed up this process, I am going to just gently glance a line alongside the bottom of my block where I've already started digging, and I'm going to just gently scrape here until the line becomes deep enough that I can gently break apart the sand block. Now we don't want to make this too shallow, otherwise we'll end up with a big old mess, so we want to make sure it's deep enough to allow us to gently break it open without accidentally breaking up any bones. I'm going to move from this bottom line to the side and work my way there. Now remember, you don't have to do this. I'm doing this just to show you guys the entire process as efficiently as possible. You can also just do what I was doing earlier and continue the picking and brushing process around the bones directly as you find them. If you continue with this process like I am and you actually feel a little bit of bone, just avoid digging that area and focus your sights on the surrounding sand. I'm going to use this to gently pick through, and there we go. We have this whole bottom plate of sand uncovered. That was rather fortunate and pretty cool. We can see the bottom of the rib cage we were uncovering earlier, as well as the beginning of a couple of other bones we hadn't yet found. Now that we've got this lucky opening here, I think I'm going to switch tactics. As you can see, I'm going back and forth with my wider pick end, just enough so that I can use my pick as a lever to lift up a block of the sand like this. Ooh, now that's very nice. I'm going to set that to the side, nice and tidy. It looks like we've uncovered part of the head. So I'm now using my smaller pick gently around where the head is resting to make a nice little bit of space big enough for my wider pick end to go in, and I gently lift up to get this other block of sand out. Ooh, this is looking very nice. Now I have the option to either continue from the top or work from the bottom. I'm thinking, considering how much I managed to uncover at the bottom, I will work on the bottom section of our block. And as you can see right now, I'm poking little holes in the sand around the rib cage. And I'm doing this because I want to see if I can separate the sand block into two, like this, which will then allow me to uncover the bones more quickly. As you can see, we've got our head in this one. We might have some bones in here. I'm going to set that aside for later. And we definitely have our rib cage in here, along with a couple other friends. So I'm just going to gently dig around the outline of our rib cage, feeling for bone, being careful not to try and dig through the bone. For this, you are going to want short and smooth strokes of your pick. Once you feel more confident in your movements, you can make the strokes longer. And let's gently tap and also brush around our rib cage. I think I'm going to dig here a little longer, and once I have that space, I'm going to do what I did before and use my wider pickaxe end to break apart some sand. Now, as you can see, I'm pushing away from the bone because I don't want to damage it. There we go. I'm gonna give it a good brushing just to get a better view of what I'm working with. Ooh, that is very nice. I think I'll switch to the other side for a little bit, just because I'm seeing a good opportunity for an opening here. I'm gently going to dig in the wider end of my pick. And push the sand away from the bone. And don't forget to also keep a steady grip with your other hand on the block as you're working with this. There we go. And now we have our rib cage. It's a little dirty, but that's what our smaller pick end and brush are for. This is where I really want to use the smaller end of my pick, just to gently dig out the crevices within the bones that are a little too wide to be done easily with the brush. And then once I have most of it uncovered, I'll be switching back to my brush. And with this part, it's especially important to keep your movements short. And as you can see, there's a hole on the top and two emerging holes in the shoulder region. This is where we want to bring in our wire from earlier. I'm going to go in through the other side just to make sure it's as clear as possible. For those of you at home, you may also want to wash your skeleton. Now make sure you ask your parents before you do this. And you may want their help in moving the bones from your workstation to the sink. Now that we've got our little shoulder holes ready, we're going to aim for the spine. Now this might take a little bit more work than the other holes, in part because of just how long it is. That's much clearer, so I'm going to set that to the side for now and work on my other skeleton portions. We have most of the head already uncleared, so I am going to just gently remove a little bit of the sand block that's covering his face and work at it from the side. I might want to take my pick around the nose. And as you can see here, our little pirate friend has an eye patch. Now, I bet many of you have seen eye patches on pirates in media, and this actually has some truth to it. Pirates often wore eye patches because they needed to be able to see in the darkness below the decks of the ship. But they also still needed to be able to see on in the bright skies above deck. So that's why they kept one eye covered, was just to more easily transition between the brightness of above deck to the darkness of below deck, which is really cool. And below deck is often where they stored their food supplies. Now, you already know that pirates did not have access to a lot of citrusy fruits that were high in vitamin C. They also did not have access to bananas. This was because they thought bananas brought bad luck on board, and there is some truth to this as well. Historians believe that the superstition arose because the places that they'd get bananas from would also have quite large spiders that like to hide in the banana bundle. And so, where there are spiders, not many good things happen. Pirates could get bites on themselves, or at least a very good scare. So, just remember, if you're on board the deck of a pirate ship, maybe think twice about bringing a banana as your snack. For his eye, I'm going to be using my pick very lightly. Just scrape out the eye socket like so. See how I'm using a spinning motion to gently grace the inner line of the socket rather than push through. Ooh, very nice. And then for the final details, I'll be using my brush and some gentle tapping motions. So as you can see, the top part is already quite clear. The bottom part of the hole is right here. So I'm going to be gently using my wire to just pick out as well as spin out that extra bit of sand. Now, if you're not sure if you have the hole entirely clear, just look at it from the bottom or the top and see if you can see a sign of light. I don't see one quite yet, so that means that I need to dig just a little more. Now let's move on to our other bones. Earlier we saw this bone by the rib cage. Let's uncover that one and see if any of your guesses were right about what kind of bone it was. Now this might be a foot, this could also be an arm. We'll just have to wait and see. Either way, proceed with caution. You don't want to injure the hand or the foot. What do we have here? I see the bottom of a foot. I think I could be wrong. Remember, as a good archaeologist, you don't want to jump to any conclusions here, and you just want to proceed with caution. Now that we've gently dug out our bone and given it a good wash, we can see that this is, in fact, the lower arm and hand. I'm going to set this to the side, and as some of you astute observers might have noticed, I've dug out quite a few bones since then. We've got our feet, our second hand, and our two upper legs, as well as our other upper arm to the side. I'm going to set these over here for now, and we still have one more bone that needs a little more work. Now, we might have to be a little extra careful to make sure we're not breaking any bones, but pirates had a weird practice with eggshells, very much the opposite of what we're doing right now. Pirates, as with many people back then, were superstitious of attracting witches, and since eggshells were often used in pagan practices, people would often, especially pirates, completely crush an eggshell after consuming an egg to avoid attracting witches. Now, pirates were not only superstitious of eggshells, they were also superstitious of redheads and women, as redheads were believed to be cursed or also practitioners of witchcraft, and women were generally possible witches. So can never be too careful on a ship. However, there were a few notable female pirates, such as Anne Bonny, that were quite successful in their field. Any young gals out there yearning to explore the high seas, there are plenty of models to look up to, despite what early pirates believed. I don't want to accidentally pierce the bone, so I'm just feeling around for the soft sand. Twisting can help. Ha-ha! Now we have quite a bit uncovered from there. It's a good thing we went about that process carefully. As you can see, there was quite a bit of bone to work with on the side. Now we still need a little bit more space to fully push out the bone, so I'm going to use the smaller end of my pick just to gently twirl until I can break it apart. Ooh, look at that! Now, as you can see at the bottom here, we have a very, very faint outline of a hole. So we want to grab our wire and just dig out that sand using small swirly motions as well as deeper digs. We'll have this one join the tub with our other skeleton pieces, just to make sure it gets nice and clean. Now you guys at home might want to use your sink, and that is perfectly fine. While we let that soak, I'm going to uncover our last foot. There we go. Ooh, look at that. There you have it. Okay. Now let's brush this aside very carefully and work on cleaning and assembling our skeleton. We've got one leg bone here. We have another here. His hole still needs to be cleared. So let's get that going. Now with this hole, as with all the other holes, you gotta be very careful and delicate so you don't damage the surrounding bone. And if you do break it a little bit, there's always glue. So I'm gonna set these to the side until we have the rest of the skeleton laid out and determine whether or not that is in fact for our arms or for our legs. As archaeologists, we have to make sure that we're correctly identifying our body parts. I'm going to set them right up top here. I'm going to just gently swirl around my pelvic bone in the water. Now remember, you don't have to do this with water. You just might find it a little easier to work with if you do use it, but if you're up for the challenge, you can do it dry as well. Okay, that is very nice. I'm going to set that right here. Ooh, yes, these are definitely our leg bones, so I'm going to set that here. And this up here, and this here. I'm going to keep leaving my rib cage to the side. Now, it seems like I still need a hand, and there he is. Remember, you always have to keep an eye on your bone inventory. There we go. Now the last thing we have is our rib cage. Now for those of you at home, this might be one of the harder pieces to clean out, and that's no problem. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease. You can use either a toothpick or wire, depending on what feels comfortable. And you also have to keep in mind there's a big old chest cavity in here to deal with. So you don't want to put too much effort into cleaning that out when you want to be focusing on the hole within the spine. Gonna give that a gentle rinsing right here. Now that we've cleaned up our rib cage and I can stick my wire through the entire spine, I will now be using this as the base to attach the entire skeleton together with the rope provided in your kit. Now this might take a little bit of feeling out, but once you have the rope inserted a decent amount, let's say about there, you can then use your wire to guide it through. This might take a couple of tries, but once you've got it in, you can get it done pretty quickly, and it's okay if it takes a little more time. There we go. Now that we've got that, let's save a little bit up top for our head. Okay, I've cleared out the sand so you can see the assembly of the leg and arms a little bit better. So we will be attaching our leg to our thigh bone here. And as I've been doing with each previous part, we're gonna gather that extra string and tie a double knot like so. And trimming off the excess so then we can move on to the next connecting joint. So why don't we go move on to this arm. Twirling the string may be helpful for some of you if it starts to fray outwards a little bit, just to make it easier to poke through the hole. You can also dampen it if you want to. And just very carefully try not to aim for the rib cage. And here we go, me hearties. Well done on your skeleton. This can be your lovely first mate on your own pirate crew. Shiver me timbers, matey! We completed our pirate excavation project. We learned about the difficult life of pirates while at sea, why they became pirates, and some very famous pirate men and women. What do you think? Would you want to become a pirate? I know I wouldn't. And that's it for this project. Awesome job. See you next time.